Long balls here on Monday, May 19th. I'm Robert. He's Jason. Let's get things rolling with a best and worst of the weekend that was. Like you said, there was plenty of action across all the leagues, domestically and internationally. We usually focus specifically on American soccer, but this one kind of bridges the gap. There's American ownership and Americans on the team, but I was going to say, best of the weekend, Crystal Palace winning their first ever trophy, 160 years. I know I'm a long-suffering Lions fan, and it's been like a lifetime, a couple of generations worth since the 50s since they won anything. But imagine none of your ancestors ever saw your team. Like there was a social media post, a montage of the fans, like as the final whistle went, and there was not one person not crying. There was probably a shot panning of 5,000 to 10,000 people, and they were all sobbing like children.
Yeah.
They couldn't have pictured this ever in their lifetimes, and a win, here it is. And it might even give you a little bit of hope as a Fulham fan, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. I had to root for Palace. Well, I had to root for Palace for a couple of reasons. I think it's really hard now to root for Manchester City to win more things unless you are a Manchester City fan. And by the way, I don't begrudge Manchester City fans the right to root for their team to win, but the rest of us are over Manchester City at this point. And it's not Schadenfreude. I don't even really get mad about the violations of the rules and the reporting, all that stuff. It doesn't really even get me riled up. I just, I took some heat for how I framed up Wrexham's success last week, Rob, on our comments. I took some heat. Lots of people coming at me. I got called a Luddite.
I had to Google that. I had to Google what that meant.
Rob was like, what the hell is a Luddite? I got called a Luddite because I didn't buy into the idea that Wrexham was a good thing for soccer, for football. I don't love this sort of like financial doping that's happened. But then again, that's just the way of the world. I mean, Chelsea did it 2 decades ago to become a premier team in the league and to win championships and Champions Leagues. And now City has done it. I can't root for that anymore, right? I understand the world is what the world is. It's always great, though, to see somebody buck the trend or see somebody spring an upset like Palace did. You look, I mean, people were laughing in that sort of cackling, I can't believe this happened way, that Palace won that game despite the dominance that Manchester City had in the game. One thing that gets hard for us as soccer fans to explain, and there's so many analytics out there, there's so many numbers, there's so much crunching of those numbers, trying to figure out the underlying structures of the game, and I more power to them. But sometimes you just say the ball didn't go in.
Yeah.
How'd that team win? The other team, the ball just didn't go in. It didn't go in for City. And I'm so thrilled for Chris Richards, who was very good in that game, like very, very good defensively in that game. Obviously we have a goalkeeper there as well, but it doesn't ever play, so I'm not sure that's a big deal. But
it was a redeeming quality. He wasn't bad enough of a teammate to be a locker room poison to bring them down and not win.
I mean,
that's Turner's contribution, perhaps.
No, and Matt Turner did play, so I believe he gets a medal. He did play in the tournament, so he does get a medal as an FA Cup winner, and he deserves that, right? He deserves. I have a state football championship ring, despite barely playing my senior year because I was like a scout team hero and made like 3 appearances. So, it happens. That's a thing. It's not an invalid way to contribute. So I'm thrilled for Chris Richards. That's absolutely one of the best things from the weekend. A kid from Alabama winning an FA Cup title.
Can't say there's too many of those on that list. How many are, there's not too many American winners in general, but from that region of the country. So mine was Crystal Palace. So who would you say your best?
I was going to take Crystal Palace, and now you've stolen my thunder, and I have to come up with a different one.
Well, there's a couple options if we're still scanning across the sea. I mean, the tributes to Jamie Vardy, the tributes in Italy, in Roma to Claudio Ranieri were pretty touching. There was also the goodbye ceremonies to Goodison Park. For Arsenal fans, the second place championship. And there's plenty of those across the way. But also you could bring it in here. I mean, Toronto got themselves a rare thunderous victory.
Well, that's actually one of the worst of the weekend. I'll take a worst on that. I mean, Montreal, I'm a little bit dicey on the red card that Montreal was given to allow Toronto to go rampant. I mean, Bernardeschi was great, but it's made easier when the other team is down a player. And it is a judgment call, the dog so call, but to me, there is a defender, and maybe he has to like bust it, and maybe he's not going to get there, but at least he was in the frame to make a defensive run to try to stop that chance. It's, what are we, 34, 30 yards, 40 yards from goal at the time? I don't know. Anyway, go back and watch that if you want to maybe argue with me as to whether or not that should have been a red card. But Toronto FC needs the joy. They
Yeah,
beat
they need something. They need something.
they beat a bad team, but it's a rivalry game. They don't there is hostility there. It's kind of a cultural thing as much as anything else in Canada. So I will take that as that's a worse for Montreal as much as it's a good for Toronto. But if you want a best, how about we take? No, they're not. They beat a team that's disappointing, and I do think that in terms of the MLS sack race, keep your eyes peeled to Atlanta, Georgia. But the Philadelphia Union, it's a penalty kick, but they win in Atlanta. They go top of the table. And while you would have said before the season, all right, I got Miami being something because they won the points title last year. And I got Cincinnati being something because they've made steps and they brought in Evander and they did. I got the Crew being something, being very good because they have been very good. Philadelphia, maybe a playoff team, but this where the Philadelphia is right now, not only top of the table, tied with Cincinnati, but best goal difference in the league. I mean, best goal difference in the conference, rather. Vancouver's actually got the best in the league. That's good. Credit to Bradley Carnell, credit to this Philadelphia Union team. Because remember, Jim Curtin got fired because Jim Curtin didn't want to go full in on the kids. And here Bradley Carnell is executing Ernst Tanner's plan, and it's working. It vindicates Ernst Tanner to this point in the season, and we got a long way to go.
Yeah, candidates for worst of the weekend. You touched on Montreal. I might go Charlotte. Charlotte FC, not a good look for them. They fall at home by 4-1 to Greg Berhalter's Chicago Fire. And all the kind of like coverage and online commentary of this was Zaha. Is he doing enough? Does he have the right attitude? And losing 4-1 at home when you think that you're like getting into that, elite echelon in that MLS Eastern Conference, this is definitely a step back for them.
And I will also say, to tag on to your comment about Charlotte, playing at home against a Fire team that has been very up and down this season. They got beat by 7 goals. I mean, stuff that is it should give you the sense that you should win this game if you're Charlotte to lose that way. And man, we were hoping for so much from Patrick Agyemang after his turn in the U.S. men's national team in January, and it just has not happened for him. Is he talented? Sure. Is he scoring enough to make him a candidate to jump over some of the other people in line to be in the U.S. men's national team picture going into the Gold Cup? I don't know right now. Brian White took his momentum and rolled it right into the season, and Agyemang has not, and I'm disappointed by that.
Yeah, that would have been a lot more fun had he, kept that going. But yeah, Brian White rocking and rolling, and hopefully we should be seeing Gold Cup rosters here pretty soon. Right.
I believe this 60-man roster, the big giant one that's not limited to the final, is coming out today, probably later after our show. So we'll maybe talk about it on Wednesday. I wouldn't expect any surprises on a 60-man roster. I mean, Agyemang will probably be on it, whether he makes the 23 or 26 or whatever we're doing this time around. That is a different question.
Didn't make our list, but honorary mention for worst was Inter Miami going down to Orlando. 5 losses and 7 for the
5 and 7. Yeah, and you wonder if there's going to have to be a shakeup, if something's going to have to change. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to say disappointed. He's human just like everybody else. But for Lionel Messi to be going in so hard on referees right now,
they were pulling out everything. They were trying to, like, the last 15 minutes was just like, all right, let's try to pull out every dirty trick in the book and see if we get a penalty or something.
It is now, it's the last refuge of scoundrels to be complaining about the referees at this level. And he's not just saying, hey, I didn't agree with these calls. And obviously he had the issue last week in San Jose and they required the attention of Bruce Arena and all that stuff. He's saying the league needs to take a look at refereeing, which again, I don't think anybody says that MLS referees are excellent across the board, but every league in the world has issues with referees. And even if there is pointed criticism that is valid, this feels like we don't know what we're doing. We're losing games. Let's complain about the referees. Lionel Messi should be getting more preferential treatment.